Hello and welcome back to another instalment of the ShefF1 Podcast, and we've got some big news coming out of the Williams camp. We have Franco Colapinto replacing Logan Sargeant for the remainder of the 2024 season, an announcement that has caught a lot of people, certainly all three of us included, off guard. Now, we had a feeling that Sargeant would be replaced maybe for the last few races of the season, but not with another academy driver in the Williams setup, Franco Colapinto. Seb, we'll start off by just sort of assessing which names were thrown about for that seat. Who would you, and Amy, who would you have picked to partner Albon if you had no choice but to get rid of Sargeant for the rest of the season? We'll start with you, Seb.
I mean, for me, it was an obvious choice of Liam Lawson. I think he was the obvious name that everyone out there was thinking that would make perfect sense. The rumours are that apparently Red Bull blocked it. I have absolutely no idea what motive they would have behind that. Surely it's perfect to give Lawson some more experience before he potentially gets that RB seat next year. I can't see any reason why they would block that other than maybe they don't want him to get used to a different type of car, but surely that makes him a more well-rounded driver. So I don't know why they would do that. Very weird. The other name out there, Mick Schumacher, I could see reasons why you'd bring him in. You know, I think he was underrated in his time in F1. I think that second year up against Magnussen, he wasn't that bad. You know, he had flashes of brilliance. I think at Silverstone and in Austria, he was really good. He wasn't quite consistent enough, and that might have worked against him. And obviously, you know, the fact he was so crash prone. Replacing Sargeant, who, because of his crashes with Mick Schumacher, who is known for his crashes, would have been a strange decision. But I would have understood that more than this one. This one has, caught me completely off guard. I don't really see why they've done it other than costs potentially, promoting from within. You know, that makes their academy more attractive. But yeah, it's definitely something that's caught me off guard.
Yeah, no, I think the same as you said, them two names, Liam Lawson. I don't know whether, what Helmut Marko has been saying the last week, the fact that, Lawson will have a seat, and who knows, maybe by September. That was, saying that in the media. So maybe they blocked it because maybe they're going to have to put him in at some sort of Red Bull seat in, quite close in the future. So there's that reason behind it. Also as well with Liam Lawson is, they have assured him a seat for next year, so if he can't have a chance to go to another team, then surely that means he is going to be here for 2025. But yeah, Mick Schumacher, another name who, again, experienced. That's clearly the reason they've sacked, Logan off here, is because the experience isn't there, even though he's been here for a year and a half, the crashes, the expenses. So put Mick Schumacher, who's been in F1 for 2 years, would have made more sense to me. And of course with the Mercedes links, I understand that they want to show off their academy, but they're already showing off their academy. So ultimately I would have just left Logan in the seat. And I just can't wrap my head around why they didn't do it before the summer break and have done it a week in after, the Netherlands, the Dutch Grand Prix, where, Logan did have a really bad crash. So God knows what went on this weekend, but I think that was kind of their tipping point for Williams, where they've just had to sack him off. But in my eyes, I would have just kept Logan. But I'm shocked that it weren't the names of Lawson or Schumacher in the seat.
Yeah, I mean, you made a really good point in that, we've had an entire summer break for Williams to reassess their driver lineup, and then one crash at Zandvoort happens, the first race back, and then they choose to get rid of Logan Sargeant. I think it's a decision they've been wanting to make for a little while now, clearly, and they were just looking for that, proper excuse to do it. It was a bit of a torrid time in Belgium for Sargeant, but before that, he was actually on a really decent run of form, especially in qualifying, in comparison to Albon, and it looked like maybe things were on the up a bit for the American driver. But this just goes to show how much of a sort of, a complicated litmus test that Formula 2 is, in terms of drivers getting into Formula 1. Champions like Mick Schumacher, who, should be one of the first names on the list for this Williams seat now that he was an F2 champion after such a solid year in 2020. And then, he gets to F1. hard to assess him in that first year against Mazepin, and then in that second year versus Magnussen, a little bit underwhelming. And even drivers like Logan Sargeant, who had a really solid rookie year in Formula 2 just before making the jump up to F1. He won the Antoine Hubert Award for being the best rookie of the 2022 F2 season. He gets to F1 and he bombs a little bit. And then, think to the past as well, like Nicholas Latifi. I mean, he was one of the sort of most respected F2 drivers, at the time. And then, eventually finished runner-up in the championship to Nick de Vries, I think it was. And then, speaking of Nick de Vries as well, another driver that also really struggled in F1. Meanwhile, Liam Lawson, someone that hasn't won the Formula 2 championship, someone that, really, on paper, shouldn't be getting these opportunities that he has been given or being, considered for this seat. And meanwhile, he is, the driver that most people would put into that second Williams seat alongside Albon just for the remainder of the season. And yeah, it's very interesting why they didn't opt for Lawson, especially if Helmut Marko was saying, he is available, and then Christian Horner sort of saying the opposite. It goes to show that there is a little bit of pandemonium at the top at Red Bull, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of Horner or Marko leaves their posts at the end of the season, because they've got to decide on their own driver lineups as well, because I've got a feeling that they'll get Sergio Perez out of the team by the end of the year, or maybe one of them will want to, the other won't, and then whoever wins that argument, the other leaves the team, who knows. But Seb, do you know much about Franco Colapinto? Is there anything to really say? Because we're sort of talking about every other driver except Franco Colapinto at the moment, and I think a few people might need a bit of an insider on who the newest Williams driver is.
Yeah, he's had a decent junior career. He's not had, the junior career of someone who's putting themselves right on there to be like, look, you have to pick me. I think that's why this is such a surprise, because he's been okay in F2 this year. He's got, a win under his belt, a couple of podiums in the feature race as well. So he's been okay, but it's a surprising one for sure. He's an Argentine. I don't know if that helps. That South American market, that could have helped a little bit with Williams in their decision. As for his junior career, I mean, he's got one F4 Spanish championship under his belt. Other than that, he's had relatively good campaigns in F3, F2 this year, but nothing really to write home about. He's not, the youngest driver as well in the world, so that obviously a bit surprising as well. But yeah, no, as you said before, F2 is such a strange way to decide how good a driver is. I feel like in the past it used to be, how good you were in F2, that does decide how good you will be in F1, whereas nowadays it does definitely feel as though you can, someone like Ollie Behrman, like he's doing terribly in F2 this year, but, he jumped into an F1 seat and he's really good. Same with Lawson, and obviously you've got other people like De Vries, as you mentioned, where it's the other way around. So I don't know if they're reading a bit into that as well. So yeah, it is a strange one. I think he'll do okay. It's just such an unknown though. He's had one FP1 session at the British Grand Prix this year where he was fine. Obviously you can't really read too much into an FP1 session. I mean, he didn't crash, so I guess there's that. And he was ahead of Hajar in the Red Bull, but it's a practice session. It's not like they're pushing to the absolute limit. So yeah, it's hard to tell. Obviously he's had some testing under his belt, not an F1 weekend in an F1 car, so he should be somewhat up to speed. But F1 is not how it used to be, where you can test all the time when it's not an F1 weekend in an F1 car. It's so strict how much time you can test that he is going to be really inexperienced. And I do worry for him, because you do look at someone like Logan Sargeant. It's taken him a long time to get up to speed with an F1 car. It's such a big risk. I don't know. I have no idea how it's going to play out.
I mean, obviously not a lot of people are too familiar with Colapinto and his capabilities, Amy, but if you could sort of maybe predict how it's going to go, based off the fact that he's an inexperienced driver in the Williams Academy with a handful of times driven an F1 car, if that makes sense. How do you see this season going for Colapinto? I mean, it's not going to be easy for him, but like I said, the pressure is off. I think we can both agree on that. Do you think there could be some success in there, or will it just be a Logan Sargeant 2.0, you know, considering how difficult this Williams has been to drive?
Yeah, I hope he proves me wrong, but I do agree. I think it'll be like Logan Sargeant, if not worse. I do hope again, like I said, I hope it's not the case. I hope someone can finally come in that second seat for Williams and show that, you know, two drivers can do well there. Because again, Albon, if it went for his, like, you know, his point grid deduction, he would have had probably a better weekend. And it shows that the car is there, and it shows it's promising going into 2025 potentially for that partnership of Sainz and of course Albon. So I hope he comes in, maybe gets the odd point, but knowing what that second seat is like, especially compared to your teammate Alex Albon, I just can't see it, and I feel like it's almost cursed in a way, and I hope it doesn't, you know, he's still a young driver, like you said, he's not the youngest, but he's 21, and I hope it doesn't almost ruin his career. I mean, this is your one chance in Formula One, and you could potentially put your name in lights, and who knows, that there's two seats going at, you know, stake. Who knows what's going to happen there? So he could potentially make a name for himself, but I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. We've got room on the grid for a young starlet to, you know, come out of nowhere. I mean, look at what happened with Ollie Behrman. I mean, this year in F2, it's been a year to forget, to be honest, if you just base it off the results. One race win at Austria, but then, of course, that amazing showing for Ferrari in Saudi Arabia was clearly enough for Haas to be convinced, and which earned him a Haas seat for next year. And could the same happen to Colapinto? I mean, it looks as though teams are going to just, you know, see F1 experience and base that on how good they are to drive an F1, which does make sense. Although, while you've got incidences like Ollie Behrman, you've also got ones like Nick de Vries, where he did extremely well for Williams at Monza in 2020. Oh my God, 2022. And then when it came to AlphaTauri last year, it was not a success by any means. So it's going to be a risky one. Certainly that lack of experience will see some repetition of what we had with Logan Sargeant, I think, anyway. But I do want to just allude to the fact very quickly, just going on slightly off topic a bit, looking back to our driver transfer predictions in 2025. Now, while I didn't objectively say that Colapinto would get a seat, I think I was the only person that ever mentioned his name for Williams in 2025. Seb, if you want to just play the clip now. Seb.
I mean, interesting you don't mention like Franco Colapinto and Zach O'Sullivan competing in F2 this year.
But with Colapinto out of the way, should we just move back to Logan Sargeant? Seb, I'll just ask you this now. Was it a justified decision? Would you, in James Vowles' seat, have got rid of Sargeant for the rest of this season?
I think it's a difficult one because I think Logan, yes, you know, he hasn't set the world alight, and he's had crashes in him, and, you know, he hasn't always been able to take advantage of the situations and times when that Williams was able to compete for points. I don't know how many times he finished in the points, once in Vegas, I think that might be it. But yeah, I think it's a difficult one because I understand why they've gotten rid of him, but would I have done it? I don't think so. If Liam Lawson was available, yes, I think that would make sense. But replacing him with a more inexperienced driver, I just don't think it's worth it. I think Logan Sargeant, yes, he crashed this weekend, but I think he was gradually, and I know it was taking time, and I know we actually said this quite a lot of times beforehand and it didn't materialise into anything, but I do think he was getting somewhere. I do think he was slowly building up to a place where, yes, he can maybe challenge, you know, Alex Albon a little bit more consistently. I just don't think it's worth it, but I understand why they've done it.
Yeah, I mean, James Vowles has said in this sort of Williams press release, he's basically saying that they are looking to, you know, try and score some decent points in the last half of this season. They've brought a big upgrade to the car, and they do truly think that Colapinto is the man to help Albon score some points with the team. And look, Colapinto's F3 season last year did stick out to me a bit, and I'm not just saying that for the sake of it. I'm saying that because, you know, it was enough for Williams to keep him in the academy. I think that might have actually been what provoked Williams to sign Colapinto on. So, you know, they clearly do rate him quite highly within the team, certainly more than they have been, you know, because one of the recurring themes with Logan Sargeant this season in particular was that the team just didn't rate him. They just didn't have any confidence. You know, obviously replacing Albon, you know, putting Albon in Sargeant's car after Albon crashed. I can't remember what race that was. Would someone care to remind me? What race was that? Australia. I think that rings a bell, was it?
Oh,
yeah. So, obviously sticking Albon in Sargeant's car earlier in the season, even though it was Albon that made the mistake and, cost the chassis for that weekend. And so, maybe this, now that a younger driver has confidence from the team, maybe we could see some contrasting results to what Sargeant scored. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't go with maybe a bit more experience in this situation. I mean, I seem to say this every single time a team brings in a new young driver. I do seem to try and think, oh yeah, we should have brought experience in. But there is literally nothing to lose for Colapinto now. He can make as many mistakes as he wants. The team will just sack him off. It's not like he's got to rely on this F1 contract now. He's not going to be in the team next year. He may get snatched up by Stake or another team that might be, looking for another driver for next year. But I feel as though that is pretty unlikely. But I'm intrigued to see what happens. It's always nice to see a new face in F1, especially when it's young talent getting an opportunity, because who knows what could happen. The sky is the limit for Colapinto in terms of getting impressive midfield results, but, he's got to put them in first, and he's got to have that confidence from the team. He's got to get up to scratch very quickly. I'm sure he'll be doing hours in the simulator the second they are back from Monza as well, and a decent little test to see how well he does at Monza in the Williams, a car synonymous with straight line speed. You look back to Nick de Vries' F1 debut and he did extremely well there. So maybe if Nick de Vries did that well, yeah, it was Monza, so if Nick de Vries did that well, then, surely Colapinto's within a chance of getting something from this coming race weekend in Italy, but we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you very much for watching what is a breaking news video. If you do like what you've seen, if this is the first time you've come to the channel, then do make sure to check out the rest of our content. We've had a little bit of a hiatus as of late because there has been a summer break and we've all had pretty busy summers ourselves, but don't worry, there will be more consistent content coming out over the course of this second half of the F1 season, and best of luck to Franco Colapinto in case he's watching this. I'm sure he probably isn't, but on the off chance he is, best of luck to you, Franco, and commiserations to Logan, Sargeant as well. Thank you to Seb and Amy for joining me once again, and thank you to you for watching, maybe listening, subscribing, liking, whatever you've done, we appreciate it no matter what. And make sure to stick around for some more content coming very, very soon. We will be back doing predictions like usual for Monza this weekend. Keep an eye out around Thursday, Friday time for them, and we'll be reviewing them once the weekend has concluded as well. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.
Bye.